on a project or a problem rather that I thought I would specifically benefit from. It's niche, but I think many of you have probably found yourself in similar situations. I'll cover what the problem is, why the problem needs solving, along with some existing solutions. My proposed solution, more of an explanation of what I thought going into the project. A demo, which we split into two portions. The first portion consisting of photos of screens that the user will encounter, and the second portion will be clips of common user interactions. I figured this would be better than everybody trying to stare up at my phone. Then I'll cover what went right, what went wrong, what I would do if I had more time, and finally, everyone's favorite, what I learned. So what is the problem? Now, I've found myself as the photographer at many events. No professional cameras here, think smartphones, friends, family get-together, stuff like that. And you often want to end up sharing photos with other people. So what does that process look like nowadays? Well, it's a manual process. You have to pick and choose which photos you want to share. Then you have to pick and choose which photos or who you want to share those photos with. Oftentimes it's repetitive because certain people only want certain photos. Why does the problem need solving? Well, there are already existing solutions. Apple has iCloud shared photo library and Google has shared albums. So what could I do to possibly make this any easier? Well, as the user, I personally don't want to do anything. And if we learned anything in user experience, it's to not make users think. So what is my proposed solution? Well, think of a mobile application, cross-platform, that would allow users to join and create groups and then forget about it. Okay, well, what would that look like? Well, we'd obviously want it to be simple. We don't want people messing around in the application. You know, we just want people to join and then forget about it until they have to leave the group. So we would also probably need log in, log out functionality. We'd obviously need to be able to create, join groups. Well, what happens if you're over here taking pictures of this beautiful scenery and you don't think everybody else wants those photos? Okay, so we'll need some pause sharing capabilities. Since we're letting users log in, we probably need to let users register, as well as update their profile, email, first name, last name, username, things of that nature, as well as their password. So what I would do is I would start with a web server. And for this, I'll use Django, and specifically the Django REST framework to build an API. And since we're creating users and creating groups, we're going to need a database. And so over here, this is the diagram of the database. It's not the most pretty, but it shows the common connections between the tables. So first we have the user table. That one's pretty obvious. Then we have the groups table. That's also pretty obvious. Then we have sessions, which is for a group and a user. And if they're currently active in that group, that'll also help us get histories on which groups a user's been in previously. Then we have then we have files, which is only for the file and its creator and when it was created. And then finally, we have the master file list, which will contain every file and who owns that file. So say, for example, person A and person B both have file 1. They will both be entries in that table. And we need something to interact with the web server. And for this, we'll use an Android application, specifically programmed with Java and Android Studio. I was too far in to use Kotlin, which is Google's baby when it comes to Android development. It's even the first default language on their developer docs. And to allow users to easily join groups and share groups, we'll also want to implement a QR code of some sort. And so I'm not a genius, so I'm going to use some dependencies to help us with that. Now, I'm not going to show you the web server. It's very basic. It takes in requests, it sends out responses. And like I said previously, it uses the Django REST framework to build the API. And since we're working with databases, we need a database management system. So I used Django's built-in SQLite. Django allows you to use something beefier like MySQL, but I thought that would be overkill for this project. And for the application, we'll start with where the users would start, the login screen. So if a user already exists, they can enter in their username and password. However, if a user doesn't have an account, they'll need to sign up with their first name, last name, username, and password. And once they are logged into the application, they'll be brought to what I like to call the unjoined home screen. And as you can see, it's very simple. And I think that plays well into the application's design. So we'll start with the start button. When you want to start a group, all you have to do is press the start button and it'll bring up a menu or an input to then enter the name of the group. Then once that's done, you would be placed into the group. The second button is join. There's two ways of joining. You can either join via a QR code by scanning it or a URL. I did some fancy Clipboard things. We'll get to that later. But you click join and it brings up a pop-down menu. And then if you clicked on QR code, it'll open a new screen, which will ask for camera permission if you haven't already accepted. And it will allow you to join a group that way. Then if you tapped on the URL input, it'll bring up a text input box in which you would enter the URL and then you'd be placed into the group. And then finally, we have the settings button. And as you can see, the settings menu is pretty sparse. But on that profile settings menu, there are three options. The first is updating your profile or updating your username, email, things of that nature. And when you click that button, you can see that it brings you to a page with auto-populated fields, and you change whatever you need to change, and then hit save changes, and you'll be brought back to the profile settings page. Password, same deal. You'll enter in your old password, your new password, and again, your new password again. And then finally, the logout. And we want to confirm that users actually want to log out. So they'll hit log out and they'll be asked to confirm. And if they confirm, they'll be brought to the login page. Now, once you're in a group, UI looks different, but you can still see it's very simplistic. We'll start with the share button. And there's two ways of sharing, either allowing users to scan a QR code or to join or to share a URL. You click share and it brings down a drop-down menu. If you were to click scan a QR code, it would bring up a new screen with a uniquely generated QR code for that specific group. And if you were to click on the copy share link, you'll see at the bottom, there's that little message that says copied share link to Clipboard. Then we have the leave button, and we want to make sure that users actually intended to leave the group. So we'll ask for confirmation. And if they confirm, they'll be brought back to the unjoined home screen. Next, we have the settings button. This is the same as before. We don't want to confuse users by having a different settings menu based on if they're joined or if they're not joined. Then we have the edit button, which will be used for editing group attributes, things like the group name, for example. And then we'll have the pause button. And the pause button will allow pausing of sharing. And when you first join a group, its default as green, indicating an active sharing status. And when you press that button, it turns to red, indicating a paused sharing status. And this can be toggled back and forth. So now we'll see some clips of what an unregistered user will do. And that's first sign up. Since they don't have login credentials, they'll need to hit the sign up button. They'll enter in their information and they'll press sign up at the bottom and they'll be logged into the application.
Funny username.
Just wait. We're really good at security. Remember that. And once you press sign up, you'll be brought to the unjoined home screen. Similarly, if you already have an account, all you have to do is enter in your username and password and then log in. With both these screens, you see those white boxes and a teal box. Never got around to it, but that's where the application logo would go. Now, since a user is logged into the app, we also want to let them log out. If you remember, that's in the settings, profile settings. So you'll click on settings, click on profile settings, press log out. The user will have to confirm and will be brought back to the login screen. Now, if a user wants to update their information, say they want to change their email, that would be in the settings. The update profile, auto-populated fields, change whatever you need to change. Press save changes, brought back to the profile settings screen. Same deal with the password, except the fields are obviously not auto-populated. Like I said, we're really good at security here. And the user's brought back to the profile settings screen. Well, now that the user's logged in, we want to start a group. And so that's very simple. You just press the start button, enter a name for the group, and then you'll be automatically placed into the group you created. Now, if you didn't create the group, then you'll have to join. And the first and easiest way to do that is with a QR code. So you'll press join. You'll scan the QR code, accept the permission, and then camera will scan a valid QR code. And if it's valid, the user will be taken into the join group. Now, here I had mentioned that I did some interesting things with the clipboard. The first clip you'll see is a user who has the link inside of their clipboard. And the way this works is the application will look at the user's clipboard and look for the top clip. And if it's a valid link for the application, then they'll automatically be placed into the group. So this first clip is very fast. Now, if you don't have the link in your clipboard and you need to manually enter it, I disabled that feature for the second clip. And so same process, click join, URL, it'll enter in the text input, and you'll enter in the link, and you'll be placed into the group. Now, if you're in a group, you want to share the group. And so the easiest way to do that is with the QR code. So press share, and then you can have the users around you, your friends, family, whatever, scan the QR code to then join the group. And if you were to press the URL, it'll pop up with that little message at the bottom, which you can then share in your preferred messaging app. Now, if user wants to leave a group, again, we would want to confirm that they actually intend to leave the group. So they'll have to confirm, and they'll be brought back to the unjoined home screen. And then finally, the pause button functionality. Like I said, when you first join a group, it's default as green, indicating an active sharing status. However, like I said, this is toggleable, and it will keep its state, and it's remembered by the application. So what went right? Well, the Android application, design-wise, went really well, in my opinion. I had a ton of fun doing it. And I feel that even though it's super basic, it plays into the idea of not keeping users in the app too long. I want people to join a group, create a group, and then forget about it until they either have to pause sharing or leave the group. Everything else, I'm going to put in the what went wrong category. To start, I'll start where I started the project, which was the web server. Django has very extensive docs, but I often found their examples almost too generic. And I oftentimes became more confused while reading. I had to run so many little tests to see if I really understood what I was reading. The REST framework specifically is built up out of 3 portions, which is the models, serializers, and views. There's more to it, but this is pretty simplistic. So models you can think of as database tables, because that's pretty much what they are. You create a model or a table, and you fill it with fields or columns. Serializers were one of the harder portions to wrap my head around. I'm still not fully sure I understand them. But as I currently understand them, they act as translators between views and models. And so if a serializer can be placed with a model to either create a model instance or update a model instance or retrieve information about a model instance. And then views, which are directly mapped to URL paths, which the clients interact with specifically. So when a request comes in, a view is called based on the URL that was called. The view handles the request and passes it on to the serializer that needs to do whatever it needs to do, enter in data, create new, append data, whatever it needs to do. passes the information back up to the serializer, and then back up to the view, which is then sent back as an HTTP response. Now for the Android application. There's two key missing features along with some smaller details. Now this will get a little bit into the weeds, and I'm not sure I fully understand it, but bear with me. So the first key missing issue is networking. I never thought this would be such a big problem as it turned out to be. And I'm sure many of us know what a router is, but does anyone actually know why a router exists? Now, there are more than one reason, but the reason I'm focusing on is the lack of IPv4 addresses in the world. So if you think about it, a router will hold, in essence, a public IP address, and then the dozen or so devices connected to it will have private IP addresses. And this is called network address translation, or NAT. Now, it doesn't seem like a big problem, and it isn't if you're connecting two clients peer-to-peer on the same network. The problem occurs when you try to connect two clients on different NATs, which you then have to traverse, or network address translation traversal. One such method, which is one, confusing, and two, difficult to implement, is called UDP hole punching. UDP, for those who are unfamiliar, stands for User Datagram Protocol. It's a data transferring protocol that typically doesn't have any error checking, and so it's usually used for video calls, phone calls, stuff of that nature. And the hole punching portion of it is basically, in essence, a way that a client can bypass the router. And so for this to work, there needs to be a third party involved, like the server I created. It would hold the contact information for each client, pass them the appropriate information, and the clients could, in essence, hole punch or bypass their routers to connect directly. Now, the second key missing feature, obviously, since I wasn't able to get networking to work, was file sharing. Connecting two devices on the same network is fine, but I also encountered problems with file detections. So Android has Android Media Store, which is Android's API for handling the on-storage device files. And I was able to detect all changes. So that means I was detecting new files, modifications to existing files, and deletion of files, which obviously isn't ideal. I only need to know when new files are created so I can tell the server, hey, I got some more files that I need to share. I wasn't able to find a way to get around this. The other thing, some minor details was, I'm sure many of you noticed, I never interacted with the edit button, and that's because it doesn't do anything. I left it in because I felt that it was a key functionality to allow people to edit group attributes, like the name, for example. And then I also encountered some issues with trying to update information in the database through the API. What would I do if I had more time? Well, I'd probably start where I finished off. And that's to try and complete the two key missing features, because in my opinion, without those, I don't have an application. Beyond that, I would incorporate a lot more user feedback, because the app in its current state is atrocious about that. If a user wants to update their information and the server denies that request, the user is not at all notified about that. Now, I don't know anything about Android development, obviously, besides what I learned from this project, but I would probably look more into helping the smoothness of the app. And to do that, if any of you are familiar, each screen that you saw was its own activity or its own Java executable file. Now, I did some digging into fragments, but I'm not sure if that would be the right way to go, but I would definitely investigate them more. You can kind of think of them as child activities. Then animations. I never got to use any animations, but there's such an easy way of making your applications look so much more polished and professional. And I saw some crazy cool animations out there when I was building this app. And then finally, an iOS application. This was one of the goals I set out to do. However, I didn't actually think I'd have enough time to do it. But if I did go down this path, I'd look a lot more into web application frameworks, things like Flutter, React, This would help because it would allow developing of a single code base, which could then be deployed to other experiences. And then finally, what I learned. This project was a roller coaster. I had weeks where I was on an absolute tear, cranking out features on the Android application and having a ton of fun doing it. And then on the other side of the coin, I had weeks where I was in the absolute depths of the coal mine, reading documentation, document after document with no end in sight. This project taught me a lot about documentation, although a lot of it seems like it's written in a completely different language and it's so generic. The building blocks that you need are there. You just need to know which pieces to pick and then how to put them together. And it sounds just as difficult as it is. I also got to work with new technologies and software. Django, never heard of that before this project. I never knew you could build an API with it. Sure, I've used Android Studio in previous classes, but building this application was so much fun. Looking at the Android docs and seeing a huge column on the left side filled with menus and submenus and more submenus. It blew my mind what was all there, just waiting to be discovered. I've only scratched the surface. I never once touched notifications or the myriad of sensors on an application or an Android device. Did I accomplish everything I set out to do? No. Did I come up with a revolutionary idea that's going to make me millions? Unfortunately, no. Was this project just a whole big waste of time and only for school? Absolutely not. I'm sure many of you agree. Sure, this project was tough. It was time consuming. It was stressful. But you walked away learning something. And that's the key takeaway. This project taught me that I need to be ready to learn every day in my career. And sure, I knew that, but I didn't know that. And I'm so excited to learn continually in my career because what's life without learning? Thank you.
Question.
So I might have misheard you. You said Django created your API, or you used Django to create your API. Could explore anything else in Firebase?
No, I did not. I pretty much came up across the Django and found that it used the REST framework. And I mean, the documentation was fairly straightforward, followed a couple of tutorials, and that's pretty much what got me started. Yeah.
Would the app be able to recognize if like a username was repeated? Like two people tried to use the same username?
So the server would be able to detect that, but the application wouldn't be able to handle the response that the server would throw.
Did you practice saying Django wrong for a while? You say the Django, right?
Yeah, it's the correct way.
That is not the correct way. There's no way that's the correct way. So you were messaging me the other day about the networking stuff. So
Right.
if we focus specifically on the networking things, what do you think you would do different next time with kind of the planning process for the project? Kind of thinking about that.
It's difficult because doing it over the same network really isn't a problem. I was able to get that to work with some basic test code. But when it comes to doing it over the open internet, I would have to approach it completely differently. I was doing a lot of research on this. I mean, the back half of this project was trying to fix those two issues. And I came across something called WebRTC, which is something that Google owns. It's mostly used for peer-to-peer video chatting, but it uses similar techniques to that. But yeah, I never assumed it would be such a large problem.
Because at the beginning, did you make the assumption that you'd be able to have the apps talk directly to each other rather than going through a server?
No, I always knew that there would be a server
Okay.
because the server would contain all of the contact information. It would contain which files need to be shared. So in your case, it's not exactly a peer-to-peer network. It's It's a regular network with a client and a server. However, clients connect directly to share the files. I wanted to take that load off of the server.
So effectively, if you could just get your server into the cloud so it's publicly accessible, the problem solves itself. Because as you were testing it, you had your server sitting on the same network, inside the same router, as you had all the smartphones. So, the 3 iPhones or 3 Android phones have their own, internally routable IP addresses, and your server is on the same thing with an internally routable IP, works just fine. As soon as you try to put them on different networks, talking to internally routable IPs doesn't work. But if you can get your server up to the cloud and have a real routable IP, it would just start working.
But then the question becomes, how do you connect the clients together? Because the clients, say if they're on 2 different completely networks, then that's where I was.
So you are at some level having the clients talk directly to each other.
Correct.
Not doing all the communication through the server.
Right. I considered that approach, but I was too far in to really give it any other thought.
Makes sense. Other questions?
Yep.
So one thing that I was trying to know how it's pronounced. Is that correct? I'm a Chinese, I don't know how to pronounce it.
It is pronounced Django. The D is silent.
By the way, Django is a Python, right?
Correct.
Okay, can I ask you one question that I do saw you say using SQLite for the database, and I'm pretty sure that's on the Android, right?
No, it's on the server. So
using the
Django comes built in with SQLite.
okay. Do you use a database on the server? On the mobile device?
Yes. So I have a couple files that contain if the users log in, their authentication credentials, stuff like that. But besides that, I don't keep any information on the device.
All right. Okay. All right. Okay. I have no question. At the beginning, I was wondering, like, what is the database you are using for the server? Because eventually, you still need to keep some information there. Okay. I think it's really interesting, especially you eventually saying the mobile devices are going to talk each other. That's definitely different work from the central server model, because we upload everything to the server, then we just can leave. Okay.
Especially as the smartphones start changing IP addresses as
Right.
they're going from network to network.
Right.
I'm not sure you would be able to get away from a central server and at least having pinging back and forth often to get their updated, IP.
Exactly. I thought about incorporating that whenever a request was made to the server would take the IP that the request was sent from and then house that as the current IP for that user. But
Good. Means I think that struggling with networking stuff is kind of a good problem to have, because that lets you kind of explore what the limitations are and learn about some of these things. Like, we throw around terms like routers, not really knowing what that is. Effectively, it's a firewall. and you experience ramming into the wall is what it was. All right, good work. Other questions? Once, going twice. Nice job. Whenever you are ready.
My for some reason it's not matching my laptop. Also, am I sharing my screen?
You are not right now. You were a second ago.
Shoot, okay. I don't know what happened.
Now you are.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know why. I'm not.
Oh, is that like something weird with the camera thing?
Yeah, maybe.
I think that's on your machine. We don't see the camera thing on ours.
Okay. Well, it's also I'm like on my screen I'm presenting right now.
Oh, I wonder if that, try turning your, just out of curiosity, turn the presenting thing off, so you're just looking at your application. That's what. And when you share, what did you share? You share your entire screen or you share just the app?
I did entire screen.
Okay, that's what I usually do.
It's just all right, there we go. All right, so my name is Marcus, and for my senior project, I created a chat application, and at the moment, I'm just calling it the chat app. So my idea was to create a modern chat application that features account creation using usernames and passwords. And you could send friend requests to other users using a search bar. You can search for them by just typing in their username. It'll show you a bunch of usernames that match close to what you typed in. It includes direct messages and team chats. So it includes an entire chat history. It shows timestamps of when you sent the messages. And I also sort of have profile pictures. I'll explain that later. So why? I wanted to create an application that sort of works like Slack or Discord. And I wanted to figure out how something like that would work. I figured if an app like this was created well enough, people would actually want to use it. Obviously, I don't think people would want to use what I created, but theoretically, maybe. And then I also want to see how I could make something that, how it would compare to other applications and see if it has any chance at all of being similar. So the software that I used for this, I used Microsoft Azure as my cloud platform. And Azure is useful because I was able to make a subscription and then create storage accounts. And that gave me access to their database and their Azure tables, which I used a lot of Azure tables. They're basically just NoSQL databases. And C#, that's pretty straightforward. Visual Studio.net as well. And Microsoft Windows Presentation is a tool that allows you to make a user interface using XAML code. That was kind of confusing at first, but I got through it. And it makes for some decent looking user interfaces. So these are some of the features I have in there and kind of what it looks like. So like the register page here, you know, your username, password boxes. This is home screen. That's the search bar. I search for your friends. I made a lot of accounts named after myself just for testing purposes. And then over there is the Teams test page where you can have your team chat. So now I'll demo all of that. And I'm going to use that laptop to communicate as well. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'll just make a new account for the purpose of this. So I'll just do presentation for username. And I don't really have any security measures in here. I completely, I didn't even think about it when making this, but so I'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, the bottom of it is a little cut off. So I'll log in over here now. So account are created. Okay, so as I said earlier, you can enter a username into the search bar to search for other users, and it'll find something similar to what you typed in. So like if I mistype the username, it'll still pop up, or if I just don't even finish it, it'll still pop up. So I'll add this one as a friend, and then it goes to pending friend requests. So I'll set it over here. Something that's kind of weird. You just kind of search for it. Perfect. So now I can go to my chat screen and I have all my friends here, which obviously I only have one. So now I can just send him a message. And it sends usually within a second, and it usually receives it within a second as well. And as you can see, it has a timestamp and just the message. Here, I can type something as well. And so it's pretty simple. They just talk to each other. You can't send pictures or videos because that was really complex and I didn't really have time for that. Although it is possible, I just never got to it. So now for team chats, obviously I'm not in one right now. So I'm just gonna add this account to one. To add an account, like add a member, you hit the add member button. Type in the username. And as you can see, I was added to the team right there. And that's the conversation I had with myself earlier. And those are all the accounts in this team chat right now. And on the team's chat, I include their profile pictures, which that's just pictures of stuff I like. And I have a settings menu where you can change your username, you can change your password, you can delete your account, and you can change your profile pictures. And these are the only ones I have. And adding your own doesn't work. I tried working on that, but it was really hard, like I said. So yeah. That's my application. Okay. So what went wrong? So since I created a desktop application, the further I went, the more I realized that it was kind of hard to add new features and even work on current features because I didn't have a server to work with. It was just mostly client side communicating with my Azure storage accounts and databases. So it was pretty difficult, like I said, adding pictures and everything, and I ended up not having enough time. One of my original goals was to link accounts made on here to give it the option to link with a Steam account. But I found that that was also really hard to do because there was hardly any documentation for .NET for Steam APIs, so I couldn't really do that. And then the UI took a really long time to create because, well, A, I'm just not very good at making things look great, and the XAML code was a lot. Like some of those pages were 500 plus lines, and it was really hard to read. And there's also a lot of bug fixing that went into this. Things were breaking a lot. Like earlier today, I found a bug. It's still in there. I just didn't show it. Yeah, there's a lot of bug fixing. What went right? So the chat and team chat implementations work really well. They're really fast. It does what it's supposed to do. Azure storage accounts was a big help in this. It was pretty much where all my data goes and how I just connect to those endpoints, access the data, and then display it on screen. I liked this project because most of the time was spent programming, and that's what I like to do. Whether it was XAML or C#, that was pretty much the whole project. So, and like I said, the app works and runs efficiently. Messages are sent really fast, and there aren't too many destroying bugs that end everything. So that's good. Now, the next steps, if I had more time, I would continue working on sending pictures and videos in the chats. I would implement options to react to a message. So this would be kind of like on Slack when you can react with an emoji. I want to do something like that. That wouldn't have been too hard to add. I just kind of didn't think of it till last minute, so I didn't have enough time. I wanted to add personalized profile pictures, but that was kind of going along with the first one. It was just kind of a long process that I never got to, and I don't know how practical it would be for this app because of the way I structured it. As a desktop application, it was really hard. I'd improve various functions, like when you want to remove a friend, it's kind of a tedious process. You have to enter their username, find it into the search bar, and then you have to remove them that way. Whereas I kind of just wanted it to be where you'd click on their name in your friends list, and then you could just remove them. But I never did that. I also wanted to target it towards gamers. Like I said, with the Steam API, that would have been pretty cool. Never happened though. I also wanted to have a highlights page where gamers could just upload highlights of what they're doing. And it would just kind of be like, you could just keep scrolling through highlights and kind of be like a TikTok sort of thing. But I needed this to work before I could do that. So yeah, that's what I would work on if I had more time. And what would I do differently now? I would have started with more research, especially into what sort of software I want to work with and what I would need in order to complete the goals I had laid out. I'd restructure the app. There's a lot of redundancy in my code. A lot of like methods are reused a lot, and they're just like really long, huge chunks of code that are really hard to read. And I would possibly create a web app instead of a desktop application because I would have been able to do a lot more and it would have been more accessible. Although I'm really bad at CSS, so I don't know how long that would have taken to, but, and obviously with that, I'd have to use a different stack, like something with React or JavaScript and that sort of thing. Yeah. And what I learned a lot about app design. Like I said, if I were to redo it, I would restructure a lot of it. So that's something I learned like next time, how to plan that out better. I learned a lot about cloud computing platforms because I used Azure a lot. I had to make a subscription on there. And I was going through all the different menus on there, learned a lot about that. working with data tables and querying tables. Did that a lot. And just in general, I'd say just an improvement of programming skills was gained a lot through this process. So that's always a plus too. And that is all.
Questions?
Like,
One question is that, I definitely saw the message has been sending from one computer to the other.
mhm.
Can you explain how, how the other client will see the message? Is that is it keep on refreshing or what's the mechanism of that?
Yeah, so when you're sitting on that chat page, there's a thread running in the background that's querying my table, because the chat messages are entered into my table, and that's how I get the chat history from it as well. So basically, there's just a thread that runs every second looking for new messages, and then it displays it.
What aspects of Azure do you think, well, I guess, what aspects of Azure did you really utilize for this? And what were other options you considered?
So the big aspect of Azure was mainly just like the Azure tables. I wanted to find a table I could connect to with an endpoint and a connection string type of thing, and I found those to be really easy. I considered using like some like AWS as well. I also just considered simpler databases with SQL, but I don't know. I ended up going with Azure.
Did your choice of Azure have anything to do with you choosing C# and Visual Studio, or like those two marry together nicely? Would you be leaning towards, or were you considering other platforms if you looked at a different cloud storage or cloud application?
Yeah, so with AWS, like if I would have gone with that, I probably would have chose a different IDE. I probably would have done something with like Java or JavaScript. I think those two go well together. But yeah, I guess for C#, I just thought Azure was the way to go.
Yep, makes sense.
I was just curious what the bug was.
Uh,
that you weren't showing.
yeah,
Just
so
Django.
no, so it was kind of a weird process to get to this bug, but basically it had to do with the threads that were looking for chat messages. If I were to like do a certain order of operation, if I changed my profile picture, change my username, and then go to the chat screens, for some reason, if I did it in that order, everything would crash. I don't know why, but in every other scenario, that doesn't happen. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of weird. So I save so it comes with the key, which I just use chat. And then it has a row key, which I would do like the chat entity number. So I'd have to query the chats before that to get the number. And I would just say like username. And I would have a sender, a receiver category, and then I just have the message category as well.
Else? Twice. That would be helpful if you. I know you have a physical prop, but very. If the students online could
All right, just getting ready to start here online, folks. It's getting a little train wrecky, but. Yeah, 262-353-6205.
Well, again. Is that all right? The side panel view?
Oh, yeah. it's fine.
Yeah.
And you can even minimize it if you hit the little.
Yeah, I can't even
line.
move my, all right, nope. This is just a great start, isn't it? No, I can't move my mouse over here. There we go. Okay, so great. Thank you for bearing with me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, now we can start the presentation. So this semester, I decided to deep dive into robotics, computer engineering, and machine learning. I found these topics very, very interesting over my time here in the advanced artificial intelligence class, the AI class, and the machine learning and robotics class. I'm also interested in medicine, so I decided to make a robot that would some way, shape, or form help in the medical field. That didn't work. That didn't work. All right, that worked. So I decided to split up my problem into three main points. The first being, how can we improve efficiency in modern medicine? As we know, medicine is one of the most time-sensitive careers there are on the planet. People's lives are at stake down to the very second. So how can we improve the efficiency of medicine using technology? I also wanted to figure out a way, how can we improve patient care? This is very, very important. Lots of doctors claim that malpractice lawsuits are down to the wire in cause to how they interact with patients. If doctors have good patient care, they won't get sued. So how can we improve that? And then the third being, how can modern tech improve the overall healthcare? So the importance for these problems are that healthcare is considered one of the most time-sensitive businesses in the world. And we, as computer scientists, know that technology is one of the easiest way for us to improve efficiency in our businesses. So how can we do this? Improved efficiency in healthcare will lead to increased interactions between patients and physicians, medical advancements, and saving more lives. My proposed solution for this is implementing robotics to replace mundane tasks that would normally be performed by a physician or a prescriber. So, hence, I created RoboMeds. Now, the goal for RoboMeds is tasked with transferring medications from the pharmacy to a location wherever the prescriber needs it sent. And obviously interfacing modern technology with modern healthcare. This solution that I propose allows for physicians or prescribers to stay with the patient instead of transporting the medication themselves. And this usually takes place in the office setting. My mom's a cardiologist. She is always complaining about how she does not have enough time to spend with her patients. She'll spend 30, 45 minutes with these patients, but she can never get enough information out of them. And she's constantly leaving the room, having to go grab medication, grab paperwork, grab whatever she needs to do this, to deal with that situation. So I decided to eliminate the transferring of medications. In hospital settings, nurses will no longer need to distribute medications and can spend more time performing other healthcare tasks. And I believe that this will improve the efficiency in hospitals and office settings by eliminating mundane tasks. So before I get into the demo, I'm going to illustrate what went wrong, first in part with the 3D printing. As Blade and I worked very, very closely this semester, he was ever so grateful to let me borrow one of the 3D printers. Some of you may know that I had it in my room, and I would constantly take apart the fans. I would try to clean the nozzle, and I figured out a somewhat good way of fixing that. But the main point that I wanted to make was the 3D printing. Why was that important for me to do? I wanted to make this as cost effective as possible. I knew going into this that I would require a lot of hardware, and on a student's salary, I have no money. So how can I do this? So I decided to 3D print the non-electrical components of this robot. So for the 3D printing difficulties, I led to jams, printing errors, slick 3D printing beds, and oversized prints, all of which had their own individual solutions. For printer jams, it usually was filament that would back up into the nozzle, and I would have to take apart the fan, and then I would take a small flame, very small, because you don't want to damage the brass nozzle. So I would take it, and then I'd push filament through until it cleared out the way. 3D printing errors usually happen in part when I am overprinting something. So big projects that take 24, 48 hours to make, they wouldn't print all the way through. It would leave bubbles. And on long projects like that, 24 hours and restarting a build it hurts a little bit. So it puts down my research time. I can't go into development until certain parts are printed. So that was a huge error and resulted in me printing a lot of repeat parts. So the slick 3D printing bed, I usually took microfiber rags and I would clean the surface. I would use clear glue in extreme cases, and Blade hated that because it would mark up 3D printers. And then I would use air dust cans. Those used to be the most efficient in this, and it seemed that an air dust can and then a micro rag, that would completely solve my issue. For oversized prints, there was a couple. Like this pill container, this was 1 unit at one point, so I had to figure out a way to separate that into less than probably a 60-hour build. So I needed to bring that down. And so there's little gears inside there. Some of you may know I've been having a lot of trouble with these pinning gears with trial and error printing, just trying to get the right size, and they were a handful, a nightmare. I would stay up at night thinking about these pinning gears. They're horrible. For my demo. So it's easier. So I'm going to show you how I start this up. So yes, there's a lot of wires down here. There's 2 Arduino Uno motherboards right here, all of which have 4 wires connecting to a driver of some sort, and then eventually connects to a motor. There are 7 motors on this. There's 2 on the bottom. There are 4 on the top, and then there are, well, no, I miscounted. There are 8. So there's 2 on the front as well. And those are for the sliding doors of the pill container. So I'm going to turn this on. I should also mention that inside of this are 2 dual packed batteries that are 7.4 volts, 5,700 milliamps. The volts are important because it tells you how much power you are bringing into the build. The milliamps are important because it refers to how much battery the so-called dual packs have. I first started, I had 11.1 volt dual batteries, and that worked way too well that it ripped the tracks off of this because it had so much torque, so much power going through. And then I had around 3,200 milliamps for the first battery, and that wasn't enough. This would die out, in a matter of a week, and in a hospital setting, we cannot have that happen. Like, this needs to be working at all times. So on the back here, you can see that these are the power wires. These are coming from the battery, which I have a Y harness that connects both batteries. And I have the, positive and negative cables that are running up into the first Arduino. And the first Arduino will power the second Arduino, and all the drivers are connected through there. This little thing on the bottom that's Velcroed here, this is your HC05 Bluetooth compatibility chip. This is how my so-called Bluetooth app will be able to communicate to the bot to let you know where to go and what to bring. So I'm going to flip it over. It doesn't work. I wish it did. Sorry to get everybody's hopes up. I had some coding errors on the bottom here. This left side track, the pinion gear is off-centered by less than 1 millimeter, and it's causing the grooves to misskip. And so this isn't working too well, but the right side does, and I will demonstrate. I don't know if everybody can see it on the underneath. These are the two dual battery packs connected to 2 speed controls. Each one of these are running on their own. They are not, this speed control is not connected to this speed control in any way, shape, or form. And I believe that is important because each wheel needs to be able to go forward and backward on its own. So hypothetically, if we wanted it to turn to the left or turn to the right, one wheel would need to go forward, the other wheel would need to go backwards, causing it to spin right or left, respectively. So we can turn on the speed controls. As you can see, here's the Y harness, a lot of cables going on through here. This is our transmitter and receiver. This is the receiver, this is the transmitter. Receiver, transmitter, and then put that down. I doubt it's going to work because it's meant for rugs. That's why the tracks I thought would be the best way to do it, because it's supposed to be on short carpet rugs. But let me try here. See, it's probably this one's going to start working. This one is not. I'm pretty sure it's due in part because of the weight as well, but that just takes off. But the problem is I can't go both wheels at the same time. It shouldn't be that way. The receiver, both of the speed controls, both of the batteries are connected to the receiver, individually. There should be separate signals running off where both of these dials should run, at the same time, but they don't, and I'm unsure why. I went over to the Happy Hobby over here, who's you guys know, it's a RC store, and the lady there, super nice. I probably went in there once a week to go over this, to try to figure out little kinks that I was having, and when I brought in this, she had no idea what to do. So I was like, great, like, now I don't know what to do. But yeah, that goes, then this does not. For some reason. That side wants to go, but problem is this would spin in circles, but it doesn't because there's little, I'll show you, but these little wheels, there's little notches right here, and on the tracks, there are grooves, and when they're rolling, it'll, hit the grooves and it'll just start to roll, and that's how it starts to go. But when it's rolling like that, grooves will offset, and then it ends up breaking the track, so I can't continue that. I wanted LiDAR capabilities for this. I have, that's just so great.
The glue is not strong enough.
No, no. No, it's not. I tried. Oh, Yeah, I've had a couple wire fires in my apartment. I probably started 3 or 4, honestly, just trying to figure out how these work. And I had little background knowledge in my physics class of how electric circuits work, but obviously not good enough. But at least I got through the demo before it rolling, sort of. But so I really wanted this to be a LiDAR navigation system. But we'll talk about that later. And why I did not, or I wanted to be VSLAM, but I decided to go with LiDAR, and that is, I'll discuss that in a second. So, as you can see, the tank interface errors are what I told you, that the left side does not work properly. And it doesn't reverse side to side movement because of that left side. Unfortunately, I'm unable to run the LiDAR navigation because of that wheel not working. So I can't get a good reading or can't create a map of it. This arm would work, but again, issues. I am having difficulty connecting the Arduino to this, and it sounds like I got power. I can hear it, but for some reason the code is not right. It's a lot of time looking into that and no use. There's these are supposed to be placeholders. I wanted to do this as a pulley system. Decided that probably isn't the best option, and a sliding mechanism where there would be like a little notch that sticks through this, and or this would just go up and down. I think that would probably be a better option, but we are here with that right now. So, so this is what I wanted to use VSLAM because I wanted to have the visual output back to me. I wanted to see what the room looked like through the lens, and this only allows me, or the LiDAR only allows me to see numeric values rather than visual values. And the VSLAM is easier for me to highlight a certain area and claim it as room 1, room 2, room 3 for the robot to go find. And for this, if I wanted the numeric values that LiDAR gives me, it makes it a lot more difficult because every second hundreds of inputs are being sent to it on the new position that it's at, and I would have to search through that, find out the position from the start position of where room 1 is, where room 2 is, and where room 3 is, and I couldn't even get it to move more than a foot. So that was a no-go. The LiDAR was Arduino Uno compatible, and those ultrasonic sensors, as you see on the front, is how the LiDAR navigation works. This sends out light signals that will bounce off objects around, and it will give back an input of where things are in the room. So LiDAR is more accurate, it is faster, but for this specific task, I thought VSLAM would have been easier and better. But unfortunately, that's not where we are. So what went right? I believe that I could probably get this overall cost of production under $500 roughly. I've spent around $1,500. And a lot of that was on research and development because it was a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of scenario. I would find a solution to a small problem, and then I would encounter a new one, and I would just be lost. And then it would take days or weeks of figuring out how to solve that little tiny solution. And so as you can see here, these are the overlook of my hours spent. The initial project design took me about 20 hours. The 3D print hours took 455 hours. The app building hours was 57. Research hours are roughly 80. And the robot assembly was 167, which brought me to a total of 784 hours and 47 minutes. From after I had a meeting with you, after that first week, I spent every day, including weekends, 5 to 8 hours a day working on this robot. I cannot stress how much this is my baby. This is, and it just broke in front of you guys. I hope you guys know that was my baby. And but I am patent pending now. My mom helped me with this. I got a utility patent for this because a provisional patent was, I didn't believe a good option for me at this time. Utility patent was $7,500. So I put a lot of time and a lot of money into this project. This is when I first got power to the Arduino board. I was screaming like a kid in my a little apartment. I was so happy. I think so, maybe. They're right before this, it was smoking the motherboard. I had to throw this Arduino board, I had to throw away because it was smoking, and it just broke. And I was just like, well, you know, like, so yeah, that's where a lot of the money came in. I would breaking something and then having to replace it and just going from there. So my future plans for this is to smooth out the driving of the tank with the LiDAR navigation, correct the pulley system. That is, well, now I'm gonna attach that together. So add that to the list. There's a Bluetooth configuration for the app. Yep, and of course I forgot to show you that. So let me backtrack. I don't know how to get out of this. I can't see it. All right, what is going on? All right, let's go back. Go to show the app interface for this. So I've tried 3 different apps for this. I first went with ActureRP. After about a half hour, I decided to drop it because I did not think that was at all a good resource for this. Then I went to the Apple app, the Swift software, or Xcode uses Swift, and that seemed great. The problem I'm about to show you is the Bluetooth configuration for it was extremely difficult for me. I was able to pull up the peripherals of all the Bluetooth devices nearby, but I was unable to pair with one of them. And there's a line of code. It's the menu, I guess, menu option for the code. And I tried implementing that as a menu to be able to like select the certain thing, but I just kept running into little errors with that. So I was unfortunately unable to move the robot remotely from this app due to the Bluetooth configuration. But because of the Bluetooth error, I decided to move towards an Android Studio. I messed around with that for a little bit, and then I realized once I started to actually implement it that the HCO5 was unstable. It would pair, disconnect, and it just over and over again, and I couldn't even use the Android Studio. So I am kind of in this stuck area where I want to figure out this Bluetooth connection very, very bad, but I'm sorry for the connection. It's trying to build. Probably should have done this earlier, but I was impatient. Ready? Is my screen still being shared on Zoom? I don't believe it is. It is? Okay.
And looking at your presentation.
Well, okay,
your
yes,
future plans, so not what I'm seeing here.
yes. Let's try. Alright. Why did you fail? Why? Again, missing. That's crazy. Well, I swear this worked earlier. I have it on my phone. I can screen mirror it. If that is, if I can do that, I could. No, don't show it or show it. I don't know. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it.
You spend a million hours.
I want to show it. And I will very, very long time for this, but. I would walk out. And of course, it's no longer available. This is just so great.
Robot threads. Start on their own, then drags itself off the table.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, guess I'm gonna just have to show you pictures of it. So. Uh, so the first of the law, or the first part is the login page of this. I decided to use two-factor authentication for this, a Google sign in and a text verification using an OTP code. The Google sign-in worked, no issues there, but the OTP code, I was having errors with the Firebase API. It wasn't allowing me to update the Firebase API with the phone verification, and so I was running into errors with that. But after you would log in, a screen would pop up that shows medications and the locations. So from the medication screen, you will select either Xarelto or Eliquis, which is what this robot was designed to do, since it is cardiology clinic. It also has the option for the room location, which there's room 1, room 2, room 3, or how many ever rooms you want to include. So after you select the room location and the medication, you would press a submit button, and that submit button would send a signal to the HC05, prompting that to move. Then after that screen, you would see two options to request it. One, to request another medication, and two, to remotely drive that in case of LiDAR navigation failure. If you request another medication, you'll just be prompted to go back to the previous screen, just in a new window. The Robo Med RC just has 4 buttons, being forward, left, right, and backwards. All of which won't work because that wheel doesn't work. So, but on every screen, there's a log out option and a back button in case you need to correct a mistake. Yeah, and that's the app. Sorry, couldn't get it to resolve these issues. No. That's not what I wanted. That'll work. Oh, God. Okay, so I want to correct the Bluetooth configuration with the app. I wanted to implement a charging station, so because inevitably those dual pack batteries are going to need to be charged, and it's a pain in the ass, as you just saw, to flip it over and try to charge it because it just broke. Like I need to fix it, but it is a pain in the butt to flip it over. So I thought a charging station, maybe using magnetics to try to get a charging or some type of charging to occur. I have looked little into that, and I plan on looking more into it in further development of this. I also want to allow for more pills to be distributed other than 2, but just at my current design, I thought 2 would be, easy enough, as this was my first robotics experience ever. I've never tried using doing computer engineering before. And yeah, so I wanted to try it with 2 because I thought that would be the easiest way to do this. I also wanted to add RAM and a camera to this because the problem with why the V-Slam didn't work is that the Arduinos, even with the motor shields, do not have enough RAM for a visual map to be created and stored. So the LiDAR became the only option. So if I can figure out a way to include an external hard drive to these Arduinos, I think I would have better luck. But yeah, that's it. That's the RoboMed.
All right, questions?
All right, it sounds like you're probably gonna spend the next 700 hours working on this as well. So have you ever thought about this like home use for like dogs?
Someone's mentioned that to me, say like geriatric patients who don't want to have a live-in nurse, and instead of calling their nurse to come give them their medication because they're home or bedbound. They thought that, or I've heard that this would be a good use for that, and when I first started building this, I didn't think about it, but I think now that might be the more, like, that might be the actual. I don't think, I think it might take off further for bed or bedbound. rather than hospice.
So. I'm sorry, Joe. Did you have a backup plan? Like if this one didn't work, did you have like something else? Like if the top fell off of this one? Coming up with ideas, did you have?
Originally, I just wanted to, like, the original project I wanted to do for this was create a box with 10 switches on it where a robotic arm would pop out and flip this, like, if you flip these switches, a robotic arm will pop out and flip those switches. Then I met with Dr. Lippin and he said, no, do something that actually, like, will push you towards your career. And I said, fair enough. Started brainstorming and me and my mom came up with this, and the rest is history.
Since you want to use these.
That is a good question. I think that in a hospital setting, there are cameras in a hospital, so for security reasons, they don't have to write it off as long as they know that the information is staying in that database and not being widespread. Like Facebook did. Facebook got in a lot of trouble for leaking information. I hope that Firebase would have a strong enough database, but can never be too certain. So that is a fair question.
What additions would you make to even out the weight balance on your machine?
So I thought of maybe putting the robot in the back of it and then trying to figure out a way to put the electronics underneath it, maybe by making things bigger this way and just trying to stuff all the electronics underneath. Yeah, that I've considered that for future designs. It's kind of one of those things where I just like, oh, I printed 400 hours of this already. I can't just restart. Like I would have nothing to show. But yes, absolutely, I do consider doing that in the future because I do believe that this left side may be the part of that.
If your robot were to be implemented into homes for like bed down people, how would you make it go up and downstairs?
Well, I might have to make it bipedal at that point. Or make sure that they have a wheelchair ramp in the house. So, or one of a tiny little elevator that goes up the stairs. Yes. Very good point.
You know what it's gonna do? Alright, so just like have the wheels, right? And then like, okay, so you see how it's sled, like.
You see how it's like laying on its side?
Yeah.
No, it would have been amazing if like it didn't do that.
What if it just like had wheels and then like you throw everything like on the inside of it? And then like just had it like a square with the wheels and then like have the arm on top. Oh, but you gotta pick up the field well. But that could be like on the bottom though. So this question?
No, it's it. What you did sucks.
It broke. It's broke. It's broken. The project just broke. Yeah. Oh, good questions.
I was gonna say, I don't know if this would be cheaper, but could there be a different material that you can use that would be better? That might be
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking steel. One, I don't know how to work with steel or know anybody that would do it for cheap. Because the pinion gears that are inside of this, they don't even make them anymore. So there was a lot of trial and error with me trying to figure out how exactly they work. So the pinion gear inside of this is 12 tooth, 1 millimeter pitch, and it has a 3.175 diameter shaft. And it needs to be the exact center and everything, and that's been just a lot of trial. If I wanted to print just that piece alone online, I looked for, it was $490 just to print that one piece. And I was like, yeah, I can't do it. Just don't got money like that. So I wish I did, but I couldn't do it. So 3D printing was my only option for, or with the way, or with how involved I wanted to get in this project.
There's one thing that you learned that you think will benefit you most with the
Computer engineering, 100%. This was, it was kind of cool. Yesterday, I was having like, just trying to put together the final touches. I was almost in tears looking at this just because I was like, wow, I actually know what each individual wire does. Like, I never would have thought that I would have been able to do something like this, but I did. And I was proud of that just in and of itself. I'm excited to see what future projects, garage projects I have. And so, but I think this is a good starting point, and I learned a lot about robotics. And it's not easy. It's not easy at all.
You said they don't make the pinion gears, right? What would you use as a replacement if you couldn't get a hold of any more?
So all RC type vehicles, they all require pinion gears. It's just how they get from the speed control to the motor to the wheel. And it's just that pinion gear is what, it's just what it's called for it to give. Like in the arm, I got 2 pinion gears right here. I got 2 on each side. It's just these type of rotation. These type of rotations require, but they're most commonly used in RCs. So there is no replacement. They've got to get it. Unless they came out with a motor that had a pinion gear or a set on it.
So this was good. Obviously you spent tons of time on this. This is exactly what a senior project should look like. I know you wish it had fallen apart or something like that, but it was great entertainment for the rest of us. But you know, you spent all semester learning about something that hadn't done before, and that you're going to apply in your career some of that knowledge. I mean, this is the point of a senior project, you know, and you know, also being in front of a group and having everything go wrong that's reality, right?
That's the
That's
greatest
what's
thing.
gonna happen, you know, 10 more times in your life. So yeah, good work. I was impressed.
By the way, are
Yes,
you
please.
including the estimation of how much the sound
printer.
in the table?
Actually, I did do the math, so, where it said $487.65, 120 of that is the 3D printing. Yeah.
But what about consulting?
Consulting.
$5 an hour?
Well,
Well, here's the thing, this was so extremely difficult because it was hard to find somebody that even knew how to do this because there were nobody. Like nobody, Blade was discussing with me how the Arduino Unos were a grad school class that has been disbanded for reasons unknown to me. I assumed that it was because it was hard and it was not a lot of people to do it. And I, trying to figure out all of this just by YouTube videos, reviewing documentation, and just luck and seeing if a fire would happen or not. Would a light bulb go or would it just, start a fire? So this was, I learned a lot. I learned a lot. So.
and Justin actually made quite often, like, ever since the beginning about the 3D printing, about what is the power to choose for the motherboard and how to eventually go to how to make it Arduino work. A lot of interesting topics we have.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
I would definitely, not saying I learned a lot, but I definitely also spend quite a few time with it.
Yeah, Blade
About
just
software
worked very, very closely with me, and as a thank you, I helped him move into his new place. He's done a lot for me, so cool. Yeah, this definitely makes me want to pursue robotics more. My next project, idea for a project. Yeah, sure, fix this. I might just put this on the back burner for a little bit, just because it just, too many painful memories for right now. But I wanted to make a drone.
It's better than I thought.
Yeah, no, I believe it. I believe it. I feel it when I first met Blade, he was kind of just like, oh, this guy just wants to use a 3D printer and that's it. Just to 3D print some random characters. And when I think things started to come together, he was just like, oh, he might know a little bit. He might be able to do something. So that was cool. Yeah, me and Blade, I think became pretty good friends after this. But house parties.
We got one presentation left tonight. Justin is, sorry, James is going on, right?
Not right now.
For my senior seminar project, I did a big focus on cryptocurrencies and cryptocurrency information tracking. So the problem is that I find this more of like a pet peeve personal problem than I think is really like an actual major problem. But I find when I'm checking prices of cryptocurrencies, specifically like more niche, unknown cryptocurrencies, I think it's difficult to find immediately what the price is in USD. And it's difficult to find a list just of total cryptocurrency prices to try and discover different cryptocurrencies that are more niche as well. So also with like things like Coinbase, I find it's kind of like one of the major ones. I feel like it's kind of hard to find in those apps because you either have to log in or it's hidden behind multiple menus. So why does this need to be solved? Okay, so the why, being able to quickly check the cryptocurrency prices, I feel like can help you decide whether or not you want to purchase or buy. Having access to that information is really important. Having quick access to the data about the cryptocurrencies you care about can save you a lot of time if you don't have to go searching every time you want to find new cryptocurrencies to purchase or just research more on. And having a list of all the major cryptocurrencies and their prices can help you obviously expose to ones that you've never heard before. So my proposed solution for this is to create an app that fetches a list of major cryptocurrencies and unknown ones to a lot of people, and then present it in an intuitive manner. So it's kind of all just at a glance, you can easily find the information that you're looking for. Limit unnecessary features. So try and get out of that going through multiple menus to get the information that you're trying to find, whether that be pricing or like pricing for the day or how much it's dropped during the day. All right, so for a demo,
Yeah, on the far right hand side, click on more, you can say hide floating media controls,
gotcha.
but just don't press the escape.
All right.
Because they'll pop back.
All right, so I can go ahead and run the app here.
Oh, it's not.
Oh,
Share.
my bad.
You do share the whole.
Whoops.
Press escape.
There we go.
Then share the whole screen.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. All right, so once the app launches, it's taking its time, but not the fastest computer. Yeah. Restart. Not sure why it's not loading. All right, give me 1 second. Try restarting Android.
Android emulators used to take way longer to load.
Yeah.
Before you had what's called Axum. People would just load them and leave them up for months. Take like a half hour to watch an emulator.
That's why I had it up in the first place, because I
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. Your robot hasn't fallen off yet.
Yeah. There we go. All right, so once the app loads successfully, it'll show you a list of all the major cryptocurrencies. And then it also shows different information like the pricing of the cryptocurrency at that time. And it's all live updating once it loads. And then you have a graph over here that can show you kind of how it's trending. And then as you scroll slowly, it'll also live update all of these ones. It's kind of hard to tell because it's really laggy, but the graphs actually are animating to show the new values that it gets as it's scrolling down. And then with any of these cryptocurrencies, if you want to view more information on them, besides just the price and how it's trending for the day, you can click on it. And it'll bring you to a detailed page where you can view a more detailed graph. And then it has more statistics down below, like the high for the day, the low for the day, market cap and supply and volume, things like that. That's pretty much it for the demo. So for what went wrong with this project, working with Android Studio, I'm a little bit rusty. It's been a while since I've used it, and there's kind of like a lot of intricacies with Android Studio that I ended up having issues with, just taking extra time to fix. And I've had that experience in the past using Android Studio, but I went for it again anyway. Struggling to find a couple of dependencies for what I needed to do, just knowing where to look for what I was trying to do, basically. What went right with the project? Implementing the API for getting all the cryptocurrencies was a lot easier than I was expecting. It was basically just plug and play with it. And then general UI design as well was pretty intuitive once I kind of got the hang of it in Android Studio. If I had another month, I would implement a search function to easily find the cryptocurrency you're looking for. It's kind of one of the major lacking features from the app right now. Finish adding the favorite feature. I don't know if you saw, but there were little hearts next to each of the cryptocurrencies, and that really doesn't do anything right now. Add more functionality to filter and sort cryptocurrencies. So based on like price, minimum, maximum price for the day. Add a feature to show trending cryptocurrencies based on the volume sold and purchased recently. I think that'd be a decent way to find good cryptocurrencies to look into investing in. And then experiment with implementing machine learning algorithms to give suggestions of when to buy and sell. I actually did a machine learning program for another class, artificial intelligence or machine learning. And I focused on this issue of trying to give suggestions of when you should purchase cryptocurrencies. And it worked out okay, but it's not a perfect system, obviously. I think it'd just be a fun little feature to add. That's pretty much it for my presentation. Any questions?
Where are you getting your data for the crypto stuff? Is it all from one source?
Yeah, all from CoinGecko. That's the
Okay.
API.
Do they have an API or are you
Yeah.
paying for anything?
No, it's an API.
Okay. So what are you hoping that your final version of this will do that other sites are not doing? Like, what was your motivation for doing this? Obviously, you're into crypto and stuff, but what are other sites not doing that you hope that this will do for you?
It's more so what they are doing that I don't want to do. It's just kind of hard to find a lot of information when I've looked before. I know Google's gotten a lot better at it. Like, it used to be you could only search for Bitcoin and that would show up in their little tooltip with the currency converter. But now you can search for a lot more cryptocurrencies and it'll convert for
So you're
you.
trying to compress the data that people actually care about.
Yep.
Into here's an easy to see way of
Yeah,
doing
all in
the actual stuff.
all in one place, that the stuff that actually matters.
So based on your experience coming into this, how do you think you've enhanced your computer science skill set in this project?
Definitely mobile development is something that I haven't really focused a lot on so far on my own, really. So I think that's a big part of it that I've learned a lot more about. And then not really like learning about the API, but just kind of knowing that APIs are out there and it's a lot more simple than I thought it would be to implement those. I feel like that can come in handy in a lot of different projects that I would want to do.
Okay.
Is there a reason why you chose a mobile app over something like a website?
Not really. Just kind of, I've had experience with Android Studio before, so it was kind of trying to slide back in there and see what I could figure out again.
Did you think about doing a data stamp for, say, just Google general for cryptocurrency like news? Like maybe there'd be like a link in your app, it's like news, and then it would just open up all.
Yeah, that kind of stems into the machine learning that I was talking about, because that was another thing that I planned on adding in that project that I never actually got to, was like looking at trends in the news and seeing how you could implement that and figuring out what's going on in the cryptocurrency world.
If you could consider implementing a prediction into that, like, all right, here's what it is now. then
Yeah.
give machine learning data, so it would be 6 months from now.
That's basically what it did before. Yeah. It wouldn't go, I don't think, that far out, but it would like basically tell you within a few, it's hard, it's not an exact science to predict anyway, but within a short span. Yeah.
What made you choose Kotlin over Java?
Just kind of ease of use in Android Studio. It felt like Android Studio really wanted me to use Kotlin, and I felt like I've never used Kotlin before. This was my first time using Kotlin too, but it felt very intuitive as far as using it with Android Studio went.
Other questions? Once, twice.
So we are back tomorrow night, same time, same station. Let me see how many people are going tomorrow. 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 5 tomorrow. All right, I will see everybody then.
Screen share it.
Yeah.
That's where the problem came in, but yeah, here's the, I gotta check. Google sign in, this is the phone verification part. The problem is the get code. Open the Firebase implementations. There's an error with.
You bought a house.
They moved to the new house.
It's a nice house.
Good. Yeah, I was there. He bought it with my real estate, through my real estate guy, yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of moving everything.
I looked at the basement, I was like, that's a ton of room, and then I looked on the back door, or back deck, and I only saw like 6 feet, I was like, where's your
Yeah.
backyard? And it's all, it's on the right side.
Yeah.
Always takes place, never goes on the first.
Sure, I get it.
See you, Blade, thank you. Two, and that's where the signal will be sent.
Okay.
This is where the request. There's a back here, just in case something happens, and then there's the robo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then log out.
Sure.
Yep, so it does work, it's
Yeah,
just.
no, I got you.
It's just-
I believed it did anyways.
Ready today for the start of the semester. I was like. Oh, I'm really worried. I was gonna say, I think the project's probably gonna stop out there. I don't know.
Well, I mean, it has more to do with the process. I mean, what you put into the project is an example of what senior project should be. Regardless of whether the outcome did all the stuff you wanted it to do, or whether you felt like, oh, I spent all this time and it doesn't work. But there was a whole lot of stuff you learned in not getting all that stuff to work. So yeah. I was impressed.
By any chance, now that
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think Blade would be interested as well. So yeah, we could talk more.
yeah, no, I just, I spent too long on this for now.
Okay. Yeah. All right.
Thank you. You later, James. Yeah. Yeah, I'm off with your presentation on Thursday. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, I guess.